Okay, so the class is being recorded, and my name is Dr. Sameh, and this is A230A, the rescheduled class. We should have done that last night, but for reasons beyond my control, I couldn't do it. So we're having a makeup today. This marks we're meeting for the sixth time, right? This is summer, of course, and we're meeting. This is session number 6. So what is it that we're covering tonight? We're finishing off the Duchess of Malfi, and we are transitioning to Candide. Very lovely pieces of work. I promise you, we have done a lot as far as the Duchess of Malfi is concerned. You now know what the Duchess of Malfi is all about, right? So what is it that we're doing tonight with the Duchess of Malfi? We're perhaps finishing off unit, I'm sorry, Act 4, and we're transitioning to Act 5. So what is so kind of distinctive or outstanding or remarkable about, yeah, and it doesn't have to be remarkable in a positive way. What distinguishes Act 4 from the rest of the the acts? We haven't, of course, seen Act 5, but Act 4 was very remarkable in one thing. Still remember? What did you like about Act 4? What didn't you like? Remember the trajectory? We're moving from prosperity to adversity, and we're almost there. We're moving from fortune to misfortune, and we're almost there. So obviously, Act 4 contributes towards this doomed end. Any ideas? Hmm. Are you thinking, well, should I answer myself and I be and become the self-answerer teacher that I hate? Munira, go ahead.
That's Fernand. He regret about he contribute killing his sister.
You mean she died already? She was killed in Act 4?
No, but he regret that he
But
contribute.
how can he be regretful over something that he hasn't done yet, at least? You're saying that he's regretful, right?
Yeah, she died after.
I'm asking you, did she die on your watch in Act 4? This is what I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah, you said no at the beginning. So she died, right? She got
Sorry,
killed
but
in
I was
Act.
confused.
She got killed in Act 4. I promise you, right? But what kind
Yes.
of killing? I mean, what kind of death was it? A natural death? She died on her in her bed peacefully?
No, for sure. Her brother
Absolutely
killed her.
not. Yeah, yeah. And why? Why in God's sake did they decide to kill her? Do we know the reason?
Because she got married for someone not rich and not dukes.
Ah, no,
He was
sorry.
not approved. He
Yeah,
was
he
not
was
approved
being,
about this marriage.
yes. Yeah. So obviously her brothers did not approve this kind of marriage because according to them, this is forbidden love and forbidden marriage because she is high on that chain of being. She's on top and he is at the bottom because he is a commoner. Yeah, he was one of her stewards. A good enough reason for them to take revenge, right? Which they did, right? And they did it through the agency of Busola. They enlisted the help of Busola, the killer. And this guy is very ambiguous. You cannot really know whether this guy is good or bad. And this is perhaps the reason why we're saying that he is different from Iago. Iago is a self-confessed rogue. He tells you right from the very beginning that I'm not what you think I am. Okay, I am mean, I am selfish, I'm this and that. But this guy, Busola, is different. He's very complex. Sometimes he shows you signs of sincerity in what he says, and he says very nice things, lashing out against the court and the corruption there, um, advocating for a system of um, advancement and elevation and promotion that depends on merit rather than on inheritance. Obviously, he is deep, very profound. But the next thing you know is that he is a killer. He's a hired killer. He kills the Duchess, and 5 minutes later, he regrets it and he takes revenge for her. Very absurd, right? So again, we're talking about Act 4. And in Act 4, the Duchess is killed. The Duchess here, of course, is the tragic heroine, okay? Which you might find very strange for the tragic hero or the female tragic hero, the tragic heroine, to die in Act 4. If you check the other tragedies, whether with Shakespeare or other people, you will find that the tragic hero, or heroine for that matter, dies in Act 5, right? This is what we have seen in Othello. Othello killed Desdemona, and afterwards he killed himself, and this was all in Act 5. So what changed? You would ask yourself, why is Webster behaving this way? Why is he killing his tragic heroine off in Act 4, not in Act 5? Obviously, this is going to upset and anger women, especially the feminists among them, and they would come up with theories, with conspiracy theory. They are going to spin all kinds of conspiracy theories. They're going to accuse Webster of being a misogynist. Misogynist is a woman-hating individual. They would say, yeah, he couldn't kind of find it in his heart to keep a woman on top, to keep her as a tragic hero. He regretted what he did. He gave her space. He made of her a tragic heroine, but perhaps he regretted it. That's why he killed her in Act 4. So people were angered, especially the women among them, for obvious reasons and for very good reasons. And this is not the only reason why we're not happy with the removal of the tragic heroine in Act 4. Actually, we're not happy again because we are so uh, close to the character of the Duchess. We started to fall in love with her. We started to admire her, obviously, for what she did. She's quite daring. She's quite courageous. She takes matters into her own hands. She is bringing to the core the idea of woman agency, like we have never seen before, right? Remember that part on role reversals? We said that there is a great deal of role reversals with, and you know, she could turn traditional gender roles on their head. Why? Because she's taking initiative. Typically, you would expect a male or a man to take initiative, and I'm talking about the 16th and the 17th century. But she is taking initiative. She's the one who is going to court Antonio. She's the one who is going to choose him. She's going to even put the wedding ring on his finger, which is quite unheard of, right? So we have every reason to like this lady. So it's only natural that when we see her dead and killed and brutalized in Act 4, that we start to shed tears, perhaps, um, feel sad and bad and everything in between, right? Okay, so obviously we're not the only people who are admiring but even her worst enemies admire. Can you imagine that Ferdinand, the one who is responsible for this kind of killing, admires her pathologically? I mean, his love for her is, I mean, very strange kind of love. Um, and ever since she died, he has changed. He he is different in a negative way. He's turning into perhaps like an animal, behaving like one, not making sense, hallucinating, raving. Again, this is the negative toll her death had on him, even Busolo. See? So her death is not just another death. And you wouldn't compare her death to the death of the other characters, as we're going to see in Act 5. That the death is meaningless. It has no significance or value because they were not very valuable individuals. They were not noble. They were conspiring against her. All they thought of was money and position and offices. She's different. Okay. Um, so again, Act 4, torture and death. And this is what the whole act is about, right? Act 4 was all about torture. Who is being tortured? Of course, it's the Duchess. And who is going to die? It's the Duchess too. So this part of the scene is devoted to the reactions of Bussola and Ferdinand to the Duchess' death. Again, why is this part crucial and important? It's because it would mark um, this awakening um, on the part of Busola. Busola is going to feel pangs of conscience. He's going to start to feel regretful, and he's going to start to take revenge from everybody else. So it also marks the first clear signs of Ferdinand impending madness. Yeah. This is what we promised you, that Ferdinand, from this point forward, is going to give us signs of madness and craziness. Again, you find it very strange that Bussola, the one who killed her, is now showing signs of remorse and repentance, which is, again, very ambiguous, right? This guy is very strange. Is he good? Is he bad? So Bussola seems genuinely moved by the Duchess' death, and at the very end of the scene, when she stirs briefly back to life, he comforts her with a truth that Antonio is alive. Of course, he was lying to her. He wanted to kind of please her, relieve her by saying that your husband is alive, which obviously was a lie. And he even went further and said that her husband has been reconciled to her, but which is another lie. Again, he feels pangs of conscience. He feels very bad about what happened. And he is even saying that he doesn't have any peace of conscience anymore. He is ready to give all the wealth of Europe for peace and quiet, a peace of mind. Obviously, um, he is going to be dogged by feelings of remorse and regret. Again, it's very tricky and very strange because right after he killed, I'm talking about Busolo, killed the Duchess, he went to Ferdinand for his reward. And Ferdinand says, no, I'm not going to give you any money because Ferdinand does not want to acknowledge the fact that she died and that he kind of ordered this kind of. So it's since then that uh, um, Busola started to uh, um, kind of thinking of taking revenge. So his moral impulses are hopelessly entangled with his dependence on the ruling elite that habitually employs him to do its dirty work. So he's not going to be compensated for what he did. Again, that would anger him all the more, and he decides to take revenge. Again, another aspect is that he is the carrier of bad news for Ferdinand is the one who, which is very ironic and very contradictory. Ferdinand is the one who ordered her death, and when he receives news about her death, he gets disturbed, and we start to receive extreme reactions from him, which would testify to his mounting mental instability. Again, it's all due to her death. And this is what he said, which is very telling. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzled. She died young. This is reflection by none other than Ferdinand. It's Ferdinand. He's saying, mine eyes dazzled because of her beauty, obviously. And he says that she died young, which is a subtext for him pitying her, feeling very sad for her. Okay, over time, he's falling apart, deteriorating into the lunacy or the madness that will characterize him in Act 5. And this is what he's going to say. Again, resorting to his animal nature and the images where he invokes the animal realm. I'll go hunt the badger by owl light. It's a deed of darkness. This is what he is saying what I did or what I ordered other people to do is a deed of darkness. And then we move to Act 5. And what is, again, strange about Act 5 is that we don't have the tragic heroine. So what kind of play would it be without its heroine, the play without the Duchess? Let's see. Let's not be prophetic about what happens in order not to spoil it. Again, let's just stress the fact that this was not acceptable by feminist critics. They said, obviously, killing off the heroine at the end of Act 1 rather than at the end of the play is normally uh, uh, looked upon as misogynistic, anti-women, uh, all prejudice. So, and then when we go to Act 5, Without the Duchess, it's bland and plain and it's tasteless. It doesn't have the high seriousness that we were expecting of a tragedy that we have been seeing all through when the Duchess was there. What we are witnessing in Act 5 is a kind of black comedy, farce, nothing else. People taking revenge from each other, misunderstandings, mistaken identities, farce. Again, we have a problem. If if the Duchess is totally banished from the play and Act 5 is totally without her, the whole fabric of the play will collapse. So, in order to sustain the interest and in order not for the play to fully fall, uh, Webster came up with what we call the echo scene, where people, in spite of the fact that the Duchess is now dead and long gone, certain characters are hearing the echo of her voice as if she's still there. So one of the main points of this scene is to convey to readers and spectators the Duchess' continued presence in the world of the play. And we have examples. You will have different characters talking about how they feel about her and how they feel her presence. Musola, for example, would say, still methinks, still I think the Duchess haunts me. And then you have the echo scene where she is obviously calling on her husband, perhaps warning him against the dangers ahead. Of course, we're aware that she is dead, and there is, if we're talking about her being there as an echo, which would invoke the idea of ghosts, this is obviously very supernatural. Um, and again, it would contribute to the supernatural atmosphere Webster is trying to build now in order to perhaps divert and deflect our attention away from the fact that she's no more. She is not there. Hmm. Again, if we're having supernatural elements, this is also one of the conventions of the revenge strategy. So ghosts often hunt revenge strategies, bringing or haunt, I'm sorry, ghosts often haunt revenge strategies, bringing messages to the living from beyond the grave. This is also one of the conventions. Remember, we spoke about plays within plays. We spoke about the character of the malcontent. Now we're speaking about ghosts. We're talking about plays within plays. We're talking about dumb shows. Of course, we're talking about bloodshed. These are all conventions of the revenge strategy. And then we move to the last chapter in this trajectory, where we're talking about consequences. The actions have consequences. If you do something, you receive what you give. If you give something good, you receive goodness. If you do something bad, you get what you have done. So you receive what you give is very clear here, where we're starting with Fernand. And Fernand, like we said, like we have seen, is not Fernand anymore. Once his sister dies, he turns into a totally different person in terms of mood, in terms of actions. He starts to even imagine himself to be a wolf. he would have this condition that is called lycanthropy. Lycanthropy is when you feel, when you have this delusion that you are an animal or a wolf. He delusionally believes that he has been transformed into a wolf whose skin is hair on the inside rather than the outside. That would clearly manifest his mental collapse since, or ever since the murder of the Duchess. So he is driven mad by guilt and a self-revulsion that convicts him of being no better than the most vicious of animals. Again, this condition of lycanthropy is a judgment on his appalling cruelty and a reminder of the flickering moral awareness that has always been part of his character. He is not only turning into a wolf, he is also damned, cursed. Then we move to another character, and this is obviously the cardinal, another accomplice in this crime against the Duchess. Again, he is also consumed with guilt. And guilt would lead to another guilt. He wants um, to to have Antonio killed, perhaps because Antonio is a reminder. He wants Musola to assassinate Antonio, and he murders Julia, the mistress of whom he has grown weary, by having her kiss poisoned. By having a poisoned Bible is also uh, a convention, a revenge strategy convention. Again, this is working within the conventions of revenge strategies. So the cardinal has a bad conscience too. He feels guilty, and he is given two soliloquies in which he is trying to reveal to us that he cannot seem to be able to repent. He wants to pray, but he believes that praying is not are not going to be answered. He has no real confidence in the efficacy of praying, which means that he knows that his guilt is far more than it can be cleansed or forgiven. In his second soliloquy, he enters carrying a book, and he talks about, hellfire, um, and he is showing us that he fully expects himself to go to hell. Again, he is mentally disturbed, but you wouldn't compare his state to that of, Ferdinand. And then we move to another guilty character, one of the, not an accomplice, actually, he is the murderer, Bussola. And with Bussola, the play is going to turn into a savage farce. He is haunted by his part in the Duchess' death. He is all consumed by feelings of guilt, and he wants to repent. He is going to try to protect Antonio from the cardinal's homicidal intentions. But he ends up inadvertently doing the cardinal's bidding. I mean, he kills Antonio by mistake. Again, if anything, that would show you that perhaps his quest for redemption is not accepted by God. He's trying to do good, but he ends up doing bad. He tried to protect Antonio only to find himself killing him. So he is too tainted by his past actions to renounce his role as hired assassin. So what we are here seeing is a savage farce, far from the seriousness of Act 4 and the previous acts when the Duchess was there. There is comedy, but it's grim comedy and grim humor, where we're seeing instances of Ferdinand's lunacy and madness. Of course, when people are mad, they act weird, and sometimes you smile at what they do. At one point, he tries to throttle his own shadow, and then the wild comedy escalates in scene 5 when Lusola, bent on revenge, closes in on the cardinal, who screams for help are ignored by the courtiers who believe they come from the mad fitna. It's all cases of mistaken identities and faults and misunderstandings, people running after each other. And then you have Ferdinand, mad as he is, he would think of himself as being in a noisy battlefield. He would think that his brother is an enemy soldier. And he would end up stabbing his brother and Busola in an undignified scuffle, having no idea where he is or what he is doing. And then, in return, Busola then stabs and kills Ferdinand. See, lots of killing. Everybody is killing everybody else. And then we come to the dying words of the characters when just before they died, they started to reflect on life and what has been happening, whether it was worth it or not. Obviously, it wasn't worth it for them. The killing and the conspiracies. So their dying words are very significant. These are the words of people who have been doing wrong for so long, and they finally realized that it wasn't worth it. And we're starting with Busola. Again, Busola is going to talk about what he thinks human beings are. He says, we are merely the stars' tennis balls, struck and banded, which way please them. And by the stars here, he means God. He says that we're merely tennis balls, and we're being struck and banded here and there, which way please the gods or God. I mean, he says that we don't have any control over anything. And if we think that we have control, well obviously, this is not true. No freedom of choice. We are driven to act the way we did. So here he's trying to say that there is no freedom, free will, or any real significance. We're simply the playthings of probably malevolent cosmic force. Then we'll move to Ferdinand. And Ferdinand is, playing along. What he says is almost like what Musola said. He said, my sister, oh, my sister, there is the cause on it. Whether we fall by ambition, blood, or lust, like diamonds, we are cut with our own dust. He's trying to say that it's all dust. It comes down to nothing. So Ferdinand is applying to himself an entirely appropriate saying about human beings' capacity for self-destruction. He's trying to say that we're prisoners of our own temperaments, and we're driven by forces, passions, and instincts over which we have minimum control. No freedom of choice. And then, so if Musola is focusing on the cosmos, talking about the stars and the gods, you're going to find that Fernand is focusing on human personality. Both of them agree that human beings exert precious little control over what they do. And then we go to Anton. Again, according to Antonio, in all our quest of greatness, like wanton boys whose pastime is their care, we follow other bubbles blown in the air. This is very significant. I would like you to picture a boy or a child running after a bubble. Obviously, at one point, the bubble is going to explode, right? It's nothing. This is what we are, according to Antonio. So what you're following, you think that you're doing great, you're following your dreams, you're getting promoted, and this is what you think is the quest for greatness, when in actual fact, this is all bubbles, because they will come to an end and you will die. Well, of course, I'm very pessimistic and very negative. So according to Antonio, the search for self-advancement is ultimately futile. And that's why he is even warning his eldest son, telling him, fly the course of princes, and thereby avoid the trap into which his father fell. He doesn't want his son to pursue um, royal court jobs, become a prince. He says, no, this is nothing. This is futile. Remember that you will end up like me, dying. And then we come to the corner. Again, he knows that he is guilty, and he believes that he is quite insignificant. What he now wants is to let me be led by and never thought of. He wants to dwindle and become nothing. So as you can see, in the absence of the Duchess, all the main characters stumble and stagger towards death, persuaded by the vanity and meaningless of their lives. Again, as you can see, the act is very grim, and if there is comedy, it's a farce. It's a black kind of comedy. Again, you see so many people lying and killing each other. Again, and obviously the death, unlike the death of the Duchess, is ignoble and is valueless and insignificant. Again, we have somebody commenting on what is happening and the difference between the death of the Duchess and that of those people. And that's Delio. Delio's analogy between the rich, eminent things lying dead on the stage and a footprint in snow condemns Ferdinand and the cardinal to obscurity and oblivion. So their death is an erasure from historical records. which is obviously a dreadful fate for members of the ruling elite, who traditionally expect their status and power to leave its mark on the world and to guarantee them an afterlife in the memory of the community. And then we end the play um, on hope, on a point of hope where we have the child of the Duchess and Antonio. That may give us hope that life goes on no matter what. So the wheel comes full circle, and we start to ask about the nature of the play, the Duchess of Malfi. What kind of tragedy it is? Um, Again, um, what kind of tragedy and what kind of tragic heroine the Duchess is? Is she to blame for what happened, or is she innocent? Because people are polarized. That they said, for all the beauty of the Malfi of the Duchess, for all the respect that we have for her and admiration, she challenged the conventions of her time, and obviously this was not good. So the Duchess is not portrayed as blameless. The play unquestionably leaves room for us to recognize her rashness in defying her brothers. So again, people are polarized. Is she blameless or what? Again, you need to remember that without her, Act 5 was nothing, was gloomy, was meaningless, was quite insignificant. So the tragedy of the Duchess of Malfi is that she is destroyed, her bid for self-determination crushed by a brutal and corrupt aristocratic order. Again, it seems that Webster is much less interested in fatal flaws than in flawed social and political systems and the havoc they wreak in decent people's lives. So the biggest takeaway would be that we have an individual, or perhaps a number of individuals, trapped by destructive social and political ideas and practices, yet powerful insofar as they can affirm their integrity and human dignity even in defeat. Obviously, the reference is all the time to the Duchess herself. And this is the end of this highly charged play. We'll take like a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we are going to start the Duchess. I'm sorry, Candide. I think let's have like 5 minutes if you guys, before we leave for the break. If you have any questions, come to the mic and ask. Because somebody was raising her hand. Okay, so obviously no questions. Right, like I said, we'll have a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we start Candide. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Yalla, bye bye.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Are we all back, everyone? Raise your hands. You guys are back. Please raise your hands. Okay, nice. Okay, nice. So what is it that we're doing now? We're shifting gears to something else. We're shifting gears to the 18th century. So remember the trains that we are covering. We started off with the Renaissance, perhaps a little earlier. We spoke about the Middle Ages, and then we went all the way to the Renaissance, and more specifically, we addressed the Elizabethan age, and then the Jacobean times, and we had representative plays from there. Now we're moving to the 18th century, and the 18th century is known as the age of reason. By reason, of course, we mean using our minds rather than our feelings and emotions. So the 18th century is known for its focus on the human mind and how things can be worked out using the mind, the power of the mind, the human mind. The 18th century is a continuation of the efforts and achievements which started with uh, the early modern times or the Renaissance. Perhaps the 18th century is the culmination of all those efforts, where we're seeing progress in all fields, we're seeing good governments, we're seeing stability in Europe, and this is also reflected in people's attitudes towards life. People started to feel optimistic about the future. They believed that progress is inevitable and it will never end. Again, uh, judging uh, uh, from what they have seen, good levels of prosperity, good living conditions, geographical explorations, and knowing new territories and new continents and bringing back the treasures of those countries and cultures. So it was a time of prosperity, it was a time of progress. And again, like I said, it was reflected in the attitudes of people towards life. Um, Again, when you talk about optimism, when you talk about uh, feeling that progress is absolute and is inevitable, um, you you will have to have some philosophical underpinnings for that, whether it's philosophical or theological. Theological means having to do with religion, and philosophical having to do with philosophy. I mean, with the philosophy, you use your mind in order to figure out things and meanings. So in either way, whether you're using your mind or using theology and religion, you're trying to prove in the 18th century that all is for good and all is for the best. Even if there are errors and mistakes, even if there are failings, you still absolutely believe that we are in the hands of a benevolent being or God, and that prosperity and progress will never end. Hence, this overwhelming feeling of optimism that people in the 18th century had. Okay. So, however, with all the optimism that people feel, there is still something that they cannot really explain, especially the pride people amongst them, those smart individuals who ask questions. So most of us don't ask questions, but there are a bunch of us who come out and they start asking questions. One of the questions that some of us may ask, perhaps in the 18th century, would be, well, you guys are saying that we should be optimistic, that we live in the best of all possible worlds. There is progress and prosperity, and we are in the hands of a benevolent God. So how come we still die? How come there is still pain in the world? How come there is still disease in the world? Okay. So if you're saying that the I mean, we should be optimistic. How can we be optimistic if we have these things? And people started to distinguish, philosophers at the time started to distinguish between two types of evils in the world. Started to talk about what we call natural evil, evil meted out by nature, like volcanoes, earthquakes, uh, storms. This is called natural evil, epidemics of all types, disease, obviously. This is called natural evil, and the other kind of evil that they defined was moral evil, evil caused by human beings. When we talk about civil wars, this is obviously caused by human beings killing and butchering each other. Deceit and dishonesty, uh, dictatorships and absolutism. So these are all moral evils, evils caused by human beings. They started to distinguish between the two, and they ended up saying that whether it's moral evil that we're having or natural evil, so we still have evil. So how come we have a benevolent God, benevolent deity in the world, controlling the world, knowing things before they happen, capable of preventing bad things from happening, and we still have evil of all types in the world? Okay, so this is the argument in the 18th century. We have this current of absolute overwhelming optimism met with skepticism by people like Voltaire, for example. Voltaire is a French philosopher, and he is an empiricist. Empiricist is a philosopher who only believes when he touches things, when he sees things, when he, in order to convince me of something, I need to see it for myself. I need to experiment it. I need to experience it with my sense, my different senses. That we call him empirical. And on the other hand, you would have philosophers who use their minds. They say, no, everything can be thought of and processed using the mind. And of course, you would have a third category of people who would use theology and religion, explaining everything in terms of religion. So of all the three, empirical philosophers started to question the wisdom of the universe. They started to question uh, um, the benevolence of the world, and the fact that we have a loving God who is in full control? I mean, show us, prove it. And this is what the empiricists are saying to the optimists. Tell us how. How come we have evil in the world? How come when there was a feast and everybody is happy and celebrating and going to church, and it was the happiest of moments, we have an earthquake claiming the lives of thousands of people in Lisbon in the 18th century? How can you account for that? Religious people, people who believes in the benevolence of the world. I started to ask questions like this. Um, they started to ask questions like these in perhaps newspapers. They write articles. And some other people started to write plays and novels about it. And one of them is Voltaire. He wrote a novella, something that is not so long for us to call it a novel, and not too short for us to call it a short story. So a novella is a compromise between the novel and the short story. He wrote this novella that is titled and called Candide, and he started to question the benevolence of God. He started to undermine the optimism of people, and he's saying this optimism is not justified. It's groundless. Why is so? Because we still have suffering. We still have pain and disease and earthquakes in the world. When those things end, yeah, we should be optimistic and happy and everything in between. See? So what we're doing is that we're reading and analyzing Candide by Voltaire, the 18th century empirical philosopher who is lashing out against those optimists who believe that we live in the best of all possible worlds. He's telling them, no, this is not true. You are delusional and you are deceiving yourselves. The world is still evil and has evil and is filled with evil of all types, whether moral evil or natural evil. Okay? Like I said, he's not direct. He's not like other people going polemical about it, writing essays or articles. No, he wrote a novella in which his main character, Candide, travels from one country to another and from one continent to another looking for utopia, looking for the perfect place, a green world. He's looking for a place where there is only justice, a place where there is a fair distribution of wealth, a place where education is a right for all the sectors of society, including women, where women are treated fairly and in the best of ways. So Candide moves from one country to another looking for that. Will he succeed? This is a question that we ourselves need to answer because uh, Voltaire doesn't provide direct and clear answers. His style is based on this idea of showing you stuff and you come up with your own conclusion. It's about showing rather than telling. He doesn't tell, he shows. He shows you uh, um, situations and places, and he allows you to navigate the complexities of life and you come up with your own conclusions. Again, he is basing all of that on the idea that we should be skeptical about the world. We shouldn't be optimistic because obviously we still have disease and pain and earthquakes and civil wars and whatnot. So this is the basic idea in the novella, Candide. So Candide is a dystopia, and a dystopia is a work of art or a literary work in which there is only gloom in the world. There is only pessimism. People are killed. Dictatorships are thriving. Women are dehumanized. No equal rights. No fair distribution of wealth. Everything is upside down in a dystopia. And these utopias are the opposite of utopias. What's a utopia? A utopia is a perfect place. It's more or less like a Plato's Republic, where everything is perfect and pure. You have enough of everything, enough food, enough manners, good manners, perfect place where everything is right and correct. So do we have that? And my question to you, do we live in a utopia or a dystopia? Given
This YouTube.
it's more of a dystopia where we don't have equal rights, we still have white and black, we still have colonized and colonizers, we still have rich and poor, we still have caste system in certain countries, we still have, obviously the list never ends, infringements and violations of human rights, still have prisons and so on. So it's a dystopian kind of world that we live in. And Candide, I promise you, is also a dystopia. Of course, Candide sets out in order to look for a utopia. He wants to find a perfect world. Will he ever find it? No. Or like I said, I shouldn't be saying absolute no, because Voltaire is not about that. Voltaire leaves it all to you. He gives you situations and places where things happen, and you come up with your own assessment. Um, so was Voltaire the first one to do that, to give us this kind of travel narrative? Because it's a narrative. Narrative means that we're telling you, he's telling us a story. And we call it travel because we're moving from one country to another and from one continent to another. So the question is Voltaire the first one to do that? The answer is no. Travel literature has always been there. To go on a journey looking for something, a holy grail of a sort, has always been there since time immemorial. And even you would go all the way back to the Greeks and the Romans, and even during the time of Voltaire himself, he was affected and influenced by English writers like uh, Dr. Johnson uh, and others. So he was not one of a kind in terms of travel literature. He actually got the inspiration by writers during his time, contemporaries. What is perhaps different with him is that he is more philosophical, because he's a philosopher after all. Before anything else, he's a philosopher. Again, It's travel literature that we're having. This is travel narrative where the hero and the protagonist and those who are with him are going to travel from one country to another, looking for something, for a holy grail. They are on a quest. And what is it that they are looking for? They are looking for a perfect place where there is no suffering, there is no inequality, there is gender balance and gender equality, financial equality and equity. Um, Again, you need to set the novella against the background of the time. The context is what I'm talking about. The idea of optimism that was overwhelming, the absolute belief in progress, um, the absolute religiosity of people believing that all is for the good. Even when you see evil, this evil is partial. جزئي. This is part of the grand scheme of things. And when we fail to answer the questions, when we fail to justify why there is evil, we know we come to the conclusion or perhaps settle for this perennial answer that we are limited as human beings, that whatever evil we have in the world is beyond our comprehension. We are limited, so we cannot fathom and perhaps understand the wisdom behind this evil. And at the end of the day, this is partial evil, which is part of a larger grand scheme of things that is inherently good. So this is obviously the justification of theologians. Theologians would tell you, theologians are the people, the clergy people and people of the church, and they would tell you uh, you're limited. As a human being, you have a limited capacity for understanding, and if there is evil, you won't be able to understand why there is evil because you're limited. And if you're not convinced, they would tell you something else. They would tell you, you know what? You are the inheritor of the original sin. Remember back in the day when there was Adam and Eve, what they did? They obviously disobeyed God and they ate from the forbidden tree. And of course, you know this story. They tell you that this was a sin committed by Adam and Eve, and we are the offspring of Adam and Eve, and we are inheriting their sin. And it is called the original sin, الخطيئة الأولى. And we are the inheritors of this kind of sin until this day. So we're paying for the infringement and for the sin of Adam and Eve. Can you imagine? We told you that it's beyond your comprehension and understanding, and you didn't get convinced. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you that you are the inheritor, whether you like it or not. You are the inheritor of the original sin. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. See, so you're reduced to a sinner, an original sinner. Uh, so this was. Uh, or these were the ideas competing during the time. People who are very optimistic, theologically and philosophically, and those who are very skeptical of this kind of optimism for good reasons, breaking down this kind of optimism and proving that it's perhaps false. And they started to express that skepticism in different ways. Some of them would write polemics and essays in newspapers saying this, and some other people would write plays and novellas expressing. So what did the philosopher Voltaire choose? He chose to write a novella. What kind of genre did he choose? He chose travel narratives, travel literature. What else did he choose? He also chose the satire. The genre is what we call satire. Satire is a kind of work, literary work, in which you make fun of the weaknesses of people. You try to ridicule the mannerisms, false as they are, of people. You try to expose the hypocrisy of others. This is called satire, سخرية, فن السخرية. And this is exactly what Voltaire's Candide is about. He's making fun of people, their weaknesses, what they do. He tries to expose society and its artificiality and its material cupidity and all those kinds of things. Again, the larger goal would be to prove as false the idea that there is a perfect place on earth. There is a utopia. And obviously, the 18th century, as Voltaire saw it, is far from being utopian. It's a dysutopia, where there is still evil, there is still evil of all types, whether moral or national. I think I'll need to stop on this note because I have given you enough, I mean, in terms of philosophy. And these are things that I would like you to think about, and I would like you to take the opportunity and try to read Voltaire's Candide. It's very funny, by the way, very ironic. You're going to like it. You need to also remember that this is a work, a translated piece of work. It's not, Voltaire is obviously French, and the novella was written in French, and then it was translated. So it's a translated piece of work. Let me ask you about the midterm exam. When is the midterm exam? Will we be able to meet? Still have time before the midterm? When is the midterm?
It's on the 15th.
And we still have time to meet at least twice, right? So we can meet next week. Yeah, we will be able to meet Sunday and Monday. Quiz. So Sunday we're going to finish off Candide, and Monday is going to be revision, inshallah.
So this final part is included.
Let me tell you about the midterm exam in terms of the things that we're going to cover in the midterm. It's the three things that we have done, including, of course, the introduction. We're talking here about the Duchess of Malfi, we're talking about Othello and Candide. The three of them are with us in the midterm exam. The midterm exam in terms of format would be two sections or two parts. Part A would be like you have three short answer questions and you choose to write two short answers out of the three. And the second part is long essays where you normally have two questions and you write an essay on one of them. I don't want to talk about the requirements and the guidelines, and perhaps we can simply talk about it even before the revision. When I say short answers, I'm not expecting you to write a paragraph. No, I expect you to write at least half a page. So if you're answering 2 questions under the short answer part, so I expect to have like a full page that has the 2 answers. I'm saying half a page. If it's 3/4 of a page for a short answer, that's fine. But not a paragraph or a couple of lines. Make no mistake about it. And the essay part, we're expecting you to write an essay. An essay is not a paragraph or 2 or 3. Essays are like at least 2 pages long, because your answer should be comprehensive, should be relevant. You should be providing vivid, relevant examples, and that would take more than a page, obviously. 2 pages at least. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
Fine. Okay. We'll have time to talk more about that. On this note and with this item, we'll come to the end of today's lovely class. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Samah,
Yes, yes.
can you please open the WhatsApp? I sent for you something in the direct.
Open it how? It's open.
Doctor, we can go right now?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good
You
day.
are.
Bye-bye.